Hello, I'm the FanFic Critic. I read it, you listen. Sweeney Todd. I bet you guys are getting real sick and tired of hearing or seeing anything that has to do with Sweeney Todd. Why? Because I have reviewed several Sweeney Todd fanfics. Well, guess what? I'm going to be reviewing another one today. Don't worry, this is going to be a summary review. It's probably going to be a long summary review, but still a summary review because the story is wicked long. Let's see, 37 chapters. The story, you may ask? Well, it actually is quite popular on fanfiction.net. I don't know why, but it is, and the story is called I'm the Only One by Todd666. My one problem with the story already is that the title absolutely makes no sense. If you read the story, the title doesn't make any sense at all. And trust me, I've read the story completely several times. Okay, let's get on with the review. It's rated M, it's in English, it's romance. I'm actually not reading it from fanfiction.net, although it is on there, but I'm not reading it on fanfiction.net because my internet has crapped out. So I have, the entire story on my computer. Okay. So, this is a love story between Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett. Surprising? I think not. It's a Sweenette. So, the first chapter starts off with really bad grammar. Although it's explained. The thing is, each chapter alternates between Mrs. Lovett's point of view and Sweeney's point of view. First chapter being Mrs. Lovett. And the writer, they were a bit sort of creative where they had her write, they typed in the words like how she would speak, although I think they overly exaggerated how she speaks. She sounds more like a southerner than a English cockney woman, but So in this story, Mrs. Lovett has a son named Toby. Toby is actually her son in this story, which was something new. And another thing about this story, they made Lucy an evil little bitch. I guess a lot of people hate Lucy for some reason. So Sweeney comes back home, he goes to the shop, he tries to find out where Lucy is. Mrs. Lovett says, oh, well, she's living down in Main Street. So he goes to find Lucy, and she's all snooty and mean to him. So a good chunk of the story is Mrs. Lovett trying to get Sweeney to see that Lucy's really a bitch. There's this one part where Mrs. Lovett's at the market, and her and Lucy get in a fight. Sweeney catches the tail end of it and slaps Mrs. Lovett across the face. It was, I don't know, it was really stupid. So as the story goes along, Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett, they slowly fall in love. And they manage to get revenge. I believe it was on the Beetle. I'm not sure, but they did manage to get revenge on Judge Turpin and Lucy. I think what happened in the story is that they managed to free Joanna from the asylum. So, the judge is suspicious of Mrs. Lovett and pretty much threatens her in her pie shop because she had been talking to Lucy about Joanna being in an asylum. So Mrs. Lovett just brushes it off. You know something bad is going to happen to Mrs. Lovett. So Sweeney decides to leave Mrs. Lovett and Toby at the pie shop so he can go and kill the judge. Unbeknownst to him, the judge has already left his home to go and shag Mrs. Lovett. That's right, Mrs. Lovett gets raped by Judge Turpin. I will admit this was kind of disturbing to read it, but it made no sense because the judge literally shows up like right after Sweeney and Toby leave. So Sweeney discovers that Mrs. Lovett's being raped by the judge. He brutally kills the judge. Toby walks in and has absolutely no problem with the murder and covers it up. So they start to live happily ever after until Lucy puts two and two together and has Mrs. Lovett arrested. And so she tries to trick Sweeney by saying, oh, I still love you, and he pretends to fall for it only to trick her and throw her into the oven like he did to Mrs. Lovett in the original film. I will admit that part was kind of good, but kind of lame at the same time. So, Toby and Sweeney, they break Mrs. Lovett out of prison and they head off to America.